Welcome to the Explainer. So, for centuries, philosophers, big thinkers like David Hume, have basically drilled this strict rule into our heads. You absolutely cannot logically derive an ought from an is. Basically, just knowing a cold hard fact about the world doesn't magically tell us how we should behave. But what if they were completely wrong? Today, we're exploring this truly fascinating framework called cognito-praesens, and it actually suggests that the universe kind of demands a bridge between facts and values. Let's get right into it.
It all really boils down to this one massive, kind of intimidating question. Can science and facts actually tell us right from wrong? Can we logically bridge that notorious gap between what is and what ought to be? It's a huge puzzle, I know, but we're going to break it down step by step today and see exactly how this cognito-praesens framework brilliantly solves the whole shebang.
All right, Section 1, the reality simulator. Think of your mind as a VR machine. To really understand how facts and values unite, we first have to wrap our heads around how we actually process the world. See, conscious entities like us, we don't experience reality directly, no way. Instead, we run this highly sophisticated internal loop, the cognito-praesens loop. Basically, physical reality feeds us sensory inputs, right? And then our mind renders those inputs into this elaborate internal virtual reality. We do this to kind of play out scenarios, test predictions, and optimize our decisions and actions. And then, boom, those actions ripple back out and impact the real physical world all over again.
Okay, let's dive into this. Inside this VR simulator of ours, we basically generate two totally distinct kinds of statements to help us navigate. On one side, we've got our is statements. This is our descriptive map of physical reality. On the other side, we have our ought statements, and that's our prescriptive compass for taking action. It's pretty simple when you think about it. The map tells you exactly where you are, while the compass tells you where you need to go.
Moving on to Section 2, the evolution of facts, or mapping reality.
So how do we actually build an accurate map? Well, through those is statements we just talked about. And here's the thing. These statements are essentially memes. Now, hold on. I don't mean the internet jokes we share on our phones. I'm talking about foundational informational patterns that are copied, tested, and modified across minds and across generations. Descriptive statements like, fire is hot or plants need sunlight, these emerge and evolve through memetic selection, based entirely on how accurate they are.
Because there is a dramatic real-world cost to getting your map wrong. Believing the moon is made of cheese, well, that's just a harmless error. You can happily live your entire life believing that. But believing a deadly poison is perfectly safe to eat? Yeah, that's a fatal error. Accurate is statements actually survive the evolutionary filter for one simple reason. Inaccurate ones literally kill the entities holding them. Your map absolutely has to reflect physical reality, or, well, you don't survive to pass those memes on to the next generation.
Which brings us to Section 3, the evolution of values, navigating to survival. Okay, so if is statements are a map of reality, where on earth does the ought compass come from? Well, according to this framework, it derives from one ultimate shared terminal goal of all conscious systems, to maintain and enhance the continuity, integrity, and flourishing of conscious existence. Put simply, if you don't exist, you can't learn, you can't love, and you sure can't achieve anything else. So survival and sustainability naturally become the ultimate, non-negotiable evolutionary filters for our values.
And what this means is that moral norms undergo memetic evolution in the exact same way facts do. Think about it. Why do traits like truth-seeking, reciprocity, justice, compassion, and long-term planning survive across all of human history? It's because communities that adopt these prescriptive compasses, these values, they just flourish far better than those dominated by deception and exploitation. Evolution is literally selecting our ethics based on practical, real-world consequences for survival.
Next up, Section 4, bridging is and ought, the logical synthesis.
All right, we have officially reached the climax of this whole framework. The big question, how do facts actually create values? How exactly does a goal-directed system cross that supposedly impossible philosophical gap to turn a simple factual observation about physical reality into a strict moral imperative?
Well, here it is. This is the conditional optimization formula that logically bridges that gap. First, we have the is. We observe the cold hard fact that action A causes consequence B. Next, we have the goal. We recognize that consequence B actually supports our ultimate terminal goal of flourishing and survival. Finally, the ought. Therefore, we logically ought to do action A. It is a direct, undeniable pipeline from a factual map to a prescriptive compass, and the whole thing is bridged entirely by our fundamental biological need to exist. Let's make this totally concrete by applying this formula directly to the concept of truth itself. So, the fact is that accurate beliefs improve our ability to predict things. Our terminal goal dictates that better prediction keeps us alive and flourishing. Therefore, the resulting moral imperative, the ought, is that we ought to seek truth. Truth-seeking isn't just some nice, lofty philosophical idea. It actually has immense instrumental value for our very survival.
Now, for Section 5, Universal Ethics Explained, the Emergent Code.
Because this optimization formula relies heavily on objective physical reality, any highly intelligent, self-preserving entity out there is naturally going to converge on the exact same ethical principles. Seeking truth, preserving life, minimizing unnecessary suffering, promoting cooperation. Guys, these aren't just arbitrary cultural inventions or philosophical fluff. If you want to survive in a universe that is governed by physics, this is the highly rational ethical code the universe practically forces you to adopt.
And finally, Section 6, the ultimate survival test, the Great Filter. So what happens to societies that just refuse to adopt that emergent code? Well, the cosmic stakes literally couldn't be higher here. Ecological collapse, nuclear war, runaway artificial intelligence, ideological fanaticism, the active suppression of truth, these existential threats act as the ultimate evolutionary Great Filter. And they will mercilessly destroy any society harboring inaccurate maps or flawed compasses. Think about it. If your factual is statements are wrong, or your ought statements don't actively prioritize sustainable existence, your civilization simply gets filtered out of the universe. It's that brutal.
Which brings us to this incredibly provocative final thought. Epistemology and ethics, they are not separate disciplines at all. They are quite literally two aspects of the exact same fundamental process, the optimization of conscious existence. To know what is to understand reality. And to know what we ought to do is to apply that understanding so we can actually stick around long enough to keep exploring it. So I'll leave you with this question. What aspects of your own internal map and compass might need a little updating to survive what's coming next? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and as always, keep questioning your reality.